store live video stream of today's show right now at 560theanswer.com.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. So the first Democrat debates Wednesday and Thursday this week down in Miami.
That would be tomorrow.
Yeah. Its campaign is upticking, of course, and interesting piece in the USA Today by a columnist from who writes for the Tennessean, Sarita Prabhu, who's previewing the debate. She's looking forward to the coming Democrat Party civil war, saying it won't be pretty. For many years, she writes, she's a Democrat, that the Democrat Party has been the party of the rich, playing a good game of pretending to be for the little guy. She doesn't like Joe Biden. She said of Biden, when you rip off the mask, what's revealed is troubling. The party of Davos masquerading as the party of Scranton. She's and by the way, she's not running for the Republican Party. She's focusing on her party. She writes, the progressive wing may seem crazy and socialist, and I don't agree with them on some things, but at least their hearts are in the right place, and they're closer to the historic progressive roots of the Democrat Party. Are they? For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined again by Tedd Van Dyk, who's a former intelligence analyst at the Pentagon. He's a policymaker for both the LBJ and Jimmy Carter administrations. He's the author of the book Heroes, Hacks, and Fools: Memoirs from the Political Inside. And we referenced a piece he wrote at the end of May in the Wall Street Journal, which was a good topic of discussion and got a lot of response. I read some letters to the editor from the Journal, or in the Journal, about it. We're pleased to be joined again by Tedd Van Dyk. Ted, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Glad to be with you.
What do you think about Ms. Prabhu's column in the USA Today suggesting a civil war within the Democratic Party is afoot, and she's happy to see it because it needs to be more progressive and socialist like Warren or Sanders, and less of a pantomime for the rich like a Joe Biden, according to her?
I think she's overdoing it on both ends. Senator Biden or former Vice President Biden is not a tool of the rich. In fact, he's middle American, out of Pennsylvania, Delaware, middle Atlantic states, understands Reagan Democrats who in large numbers voted for Trump last time. And the people on the more avid liberals right now running are a little bit to the left of the party in general, and certainly of the country. But they're not crazy, and Joe is not some tool of the rich.
Well, when did everything switch? Because when we were younger, the Democrats were the blue-collar workers, and now it seems that it's switched, that it's the Republicans who are more, the working class that voted for Trump. That's
right. I think, the switch began in 1968, but it's accelerated and really came to head with the election of President Reagan in 1980, where on a social and cultural basis in particular, a lot of blue-collar working-class Democrats went for Reagan, and that has only really accelerated. Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton were elected in kind of non-ideological bases. They came from southern and border states, were not too far left or right, but now the party has, at least among its presidential contenders, with a couple of exceptions, has taken a sharp left turn, which really plays to some of the activists who be active in New Hampshire and Iowa in the early primary and caucus states, but don't necessarily reflect the party at large, and certainly not the country at large.
With respect to Biden, are you concerned at all about his candidacy being undermined in a somewhat similar fashion to Hillary Clinton's because of what seems to be his leveraging his public office for family financial gain, this with reference to Hunter Biden, of course, and his
I think
dealings.
That will be we'll see if that's raised on the debate stage, but that's a tough issue, and it's one that voters have little patience with. So we'll see if he gets past that. I think that's far more important than some of the other issues that have been raised recently regarding his apologies or non-apologies for past positions.
Yeah, but how would he work
That's
his way
something
out of
everybody
that?
can understand.
I mean, the facts are the facts. He's got to address the issue when asked.
Pardon me?
He has to address the issue if he's asked that question, correct?
Oh, certainly does. There's no question about it. And the question will then be, is the answer satisfactorily?
Hello?
We lost.
You know, it's like we zap them with a taser gun.
This happened a few times. Is that on them or is that on us? I don't know, but that's happened a few times now, and we need to see if maybe we can master the landline technology
Well, I'm
before
just
we
worried
do
about
anything.
I'm concerned
more.
for their safety if we've electrocuted them or tasered them or
All right. Well, let's
a
take
shock collar on them or something.
Let's take a break to see if we can get Tedd Van Dyk back because I want to talk to him about this piece in the Wall Street Journal and a little bit more about the debate. So we'll effort that and be back.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Balance of nature. Changing the world, one life at a time.
When I wasn't taking it and I was waiting for my operation, I was feeling very tired. Now I'm driving like 11, 12 hours a day. I told you I manage 15 gas stations. And I have so much energy. I even gave some of my pills for my son, and he said, Dad, this is good, so I like it. I'm healing so fast. It's like amazing. My family is so surprised because my wound closing up and doing so good. So that is working now that I'm start taking my those fruits and vegetables.
Experience the Balance of Nature difference for yourself. For a limited time, you can receive a 30% discount and free shipping on your first preferred order of Balance of Nature. Call 800-2468-751 or go to balanceofnature.com and use discount code CHICAGO.
As a parent, you want what's best for your children. That means sending them to a school where they'll get the superior education they deserve, and that also shares your values. That can be tricky these days, as public schools have changed and private schools can be expensive. Your household budget has already been cut to the bone, and it's hard to imagine where you'll find that extra money. Well, there's help to lessen that financial burden and provide your child with the very best education at half the cost. At AM 560 The Answer, we work with private schools throughout the Chicagoland area to provide tuition for families at half the normal cost. Just log on to halfpriceschools.com and you'll find some of Chicagoland's finest private schools, from preschool all the way through high school, at half the cost. And chances are there's a school right in your neighborhood. Invest in your child's education and future at halfpriceschools.com. A limited number of half-price vouchers are available. Go to halfpriceschools.com now.
AM 560, The Answer.
Dan and Amy, all right, we're back with Tedd Van Dyk, former intelligence officer and policymaker in the LBJ and Jimmy Carter administrations. Ted, sorry we lost you there. Thanks for rejoining us. Appreciate it.
Sure.
So I wanted to get to this piece that you wrote in the Journal because you essentially offered a blueprint from your perspective on what Democrats should do to be successful in 2020. Don't pursue impeachment, abandon the Green New Deal, moderate Medicare for all, make tax policy fair, reject identity politics, embrace immigration reform, stop promising free stuff. I don't know how to break it to you, but I think the majority of those 24 Democrat candidates for president are not reading off the same script.
No, they're not. I think the first thing to remember in these nominating races is right now they're transfixed with activist voters in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, the early primary and caucus states. And it's almost like the NCAA basketball tournament. They're trying to get from the field of 64 down to 32, and they're not worrying at this point about how they need to play in the semifinals and finals.
Do you assess, give me your assessment of the candidacy of Mayor Pete Buttigieg from South Bend. Do you consider him a serious candidate?
We'll find out. I don't, he's obviously bright. He's energetic. He's got a good resume. I'm not sure about his record as mayor of South Bend. You'll know more about that than I. I don't know whether he's the real thing or the amazing Mr. Ripley. We'll just have to find out.
But I mean, even just making that jump from mayor of a town of 100,000 people to president of the United States.
I would be very dubious about it. And being a retiree myself, I'm dubious about somebody of his age being prepared.
He's 37.
On the other hand, there's a strong wave in the party for somebody fresh, without baggage, and he happens to have people at the top leading the polls in Bernie and Biden who are older, have been around a while. So there's an opportunity for him, but he's got a big hill to climb.
Who's in the starting lineup? The only thing I know for sure is that Bernie is on a different night than Elizabeth Warren. Did they plan that out to try to get the most progressives away from each other?
No, I think what they tried to do is scatter the people who are high in the polls among those who were not so that each night would have some headliners.
With respect to just going back to policy here, there's because one of the points you make in your piece is about embracing immigration reform. So there's a standalone $4.5 billion humanitarian funding bill for migrants at the border right now pending in Congress, and Nancy Pelosi seems to be having a heck of a time with her backbenchers. And this despite this relatively interesting study that came out over the weekend that was profiled in the Atlantic that finds 7 in 10 Democrats oppose sort of the open borders immigration policy being advanced by some of those backbenchers and, frankly, some of the presidential candidates like Julian Castro and O'Rourke and so forth. Does that concern you at all about the nature of your party maybe not being a majority a party that reflects, I should say, the majority of the Democrats' position on those issues?
Yes, it does. And in the piece, I pointed out, for instance, the parallels to the McGovern campaign in 1972. I was the policy director for that campaign, and George McGovern was strongly anti-war, had generally moderate positions on many other issues, but his core supporters were more interested in social issues and cultural issues, and he became labeled as the acid amnesty and abortion candidate. The same could be true here, where a vast majority of ordinary voters and even Democrats hold middling or mainstream views on a lot of issues. But the most active in the party and those who are very important in the nominating process are off to the side. And I think there's a danger in that this year because the activists will call the tune in the early nominating process.
So Trump, during his Meet the Press interview on Sunday with Chuck Todd, said he wants to face Joe Biden. If it was up to him, he'd select Joe Biden. Do you think Biden is the strongest candidate against Trump, or if not, who do you think?
Well, we'll have to see how all this evolves. On paper, he is, because he does cut into this middle American industrial state base that Trump tapped into last time. On the other hand, we don't know how he's going to perform. He's been hesitating and a little uncertain on the stump thus far, and he'll have to be very sharp if he wants to become the presidential nominee. So I think the field is very much still open, even the front runners. One gaffe and the first mistake could cause one of these guys to plunge. So we'll just have to see how they perform over the two nights. Out of that performance, the candidate field will narrow a little bit. Some will be able to raise money, get organizational support, get endorsements. Others will have a hard time doing it, particularly those who I call as being below the de Blasio line. That's those who are not showing up in the polls at all or near zero.
Yeah, right. Below zero, if you could be negative territory.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that you're really interested to see other than Biden performing? Like you see somebody who's got a lot of upside potential in terms of electability?
I think in general election terms, probably promising candidates include Senator Klobuchar of Minnesota, Senator Bennett of Colorado. They're liberals, but they're not angry liberals, and they talk about bipartisan problem solving, which most voters, by the way, want to do. They want to get past the polarization, the divisions. So they would be good general election candidates, but first they've got to pass through the ordeal of the primaries and caucuses.
He is Tedd Van Dyk. He's a LBJ and Jimmy Carter administration policymaker. He's the author of Heroes, Hacks, and Fools, Memoirs from the Political Inside. Ted, thanks again for joining us. Appreciate it.
You bet. My pleasure. Bye.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer.